Sandy and Nora's podcast.
Hey, Nora.
Hey, Sandy.
How is your weekend going?
Well, it has been April Fool's, which falling on a Saturday is a whole lot of fun.
Oh, yeah? What did you do?
Well, I'm not sure if you know this. Some of the listeners might know this, but in Quebec on April Fool's, kids cut out pictures of fish, and all they do all day is try to get fish taped to your back.
Okay, so I learned this literally yesterday about France because I follow this account on Instagram of this guy who makes fun of language. Anyway, one of the things that he was making fun of was how April Fool's in France is called the day of or April's fish or something like that. And anyway, It was explained in this Instagram video. It was funny, but I was also like, huh, why? Which was the point of his Instagram video, was like, why? Why would this be happening? But it was also quite funny.
Yes. Poisson d'Arville. And I went to bed, and the big statement piece was a huge X out of toilet paper in the bathroom mirror for some reason. And so I was like, cool. April Fool's. So I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. This weekend was the first weekend in a very long time where the sun is out. It's nice and warm outside. So I spent a lot of time in the park, and it was great. Can't complain about that.
That sounds awesome.
It was awesome. And also I'm feeling really, really great because the budget came out this week, and I know that my pockets are feeling so much better after hearing about all of the amazing things that the Canadian government is doing for me.
I think we should talk about that for 50 minutes.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about that for 50 minutes, that you can walk me off whatever cliff I've ended up on. If that was truly my feeling. Could you imagine if I truly felt that way?
I'd be flying to LA yesterday to see if you're okay.
Yes, this week was the budget, dear listeners. So we will talk about the budget this week. But before we get into what we're even going to talk about this week, I'm sure we've got some people to thank.
Yes, we have a couple of people for sure to thank. So again, remember, we rely on you to share our stuff. And so sharing our stuff, commenting on it, it's awesome. It's great. Thank you for that. But we also rely on folks to financially support the podcast too. And so this week, thanks especially to everybody who donated for the first time or who changed their donation, especially Katie, Melissa, and Maddie. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks. And to all of you who are now following us on the ultra subversive, or, well, at least the most subversive of all the social medias currently, which is TikTok. Thank you very much. We see you. We see your engagement. We're really happy about it. Even if we're not the most excited about using social media for this, we're excited to interact with you. So that's great. Thanks for following us. And if you haven't yet and you're on TikTok, follow us. Take a look at the little clips that we're putting on there. And if you have any suggestions about how we could be interacting with you folks better on social, let us know.
Totally. And also, I'm not sure if folks have noticed, but I finally figured out how to post to YouTube. Now, you might be wondering, what is with this extra social media stuff? Folks, we see the writing on the wall on Twitter. It's just not fun out there anymore. And we can see the impact on listens, frankly. We can tell that people are listening to us less because they're finding us less through Twitter specifically. So you're going to see videos posted, TikTok and Instagram. And I've been posting to LinkedIn of all places. If that's a place that you are, you'll notice that my LinkedIn is pretty much only going to be Sandy and Nora videos. That's on purpose because I don't really use it otherwise, but you can also listen to us at YouTube. We are now finally listed as a YouTube podcast.
I mean, I'm obviously giving Twitter a good shake, as I paid for Twitter Blue to maintain my blue checkmark status. Yeah, obviously I didn't do that. Obviously I didn't do that. But I was like, It was supposed to happen this weekend, right? Which maybe that was an April Fool's joke. I don't know. But I was just like, man, take this away from me, please. I don't want people to think that I'm some kind of loser paying for Twitter. Ew.
Oh, yeah. They definitely think that now about you.
Whatever. I never really cared about people who thought I was a loser anyway.
You know what? Before we get into the topic of the show, Sandy, I want to ask if you saw a piece of news that I think that you'll be very interested in if you have not. Did you see the news from the University of Waterloo the past couple of days telling students what to do if CSIS comes knocking?
No, I didn't. I did see that you had posted about it, but I didn't click on it because I wasn't that interested. But tell me if it is something that I should be interested in.
Well, I don't know if you should be interested, but as people who severely distrust administrations, right? I think I can speak on both of our behalf.
Wait, can I guess what they say?
No, you're not. Well, I mean, you can guess, but it's nice. It's good.
No.
Yeah. So there's a renewed focus and obsession on especially research with connections to China. And anybody who's in the research world, especially if you're in the sciences or the engineering, you likely have had wind of this, that the federal government often talks about Chinese researchers stealing our patents or stealing our secrets or all of this kind of racist, xenophobic bullshit. And if you know anyone that works in the sciences, they'll tell you that it is total bullshit. Like, the whole point of publishing is that it gets published publicly and anybody can look at the research and the data attached to the research and use it. Like, that's the global publishing market. That's how it works. And there's also a renewed obsession with students that come to Canada from China through a program called CSC. And CSC students have to go back to China, but they're paid. And so for researchers, it's amazing because it's a student that is paid by China to then study in Canada to do a PhD, which, by the way, is not a nefarious idea. It's a great idea. Canada, why the fuck don't you do that? Oh, we know why, because you don't actually want anyone to be educated. So anyway, all of this is to say, the University of Waterloo sends out a message to all of its students saying, if CSIS comes knocking, you are under no legal obligation to speak to them. And we encourage you to say nothing to them, at least until you are in the same room as like your supervisor or an official from the university who can help you navigate what they're asking you.
Wow, that's great.
I mean, I'm surprised, frankly, that they would say that.
Yeah, me too. I thought it would be something like, contact a member of the administration and we'll help you through this conversation that you should have.
Exactly. Tell them everything. And also, no, they literally say, don't hand anything over to them. Don't talk to them. They have no right to do this. And they have no right to access any equipment that has been purchased through research grants or that's owned by the University of Waterloo. And you need to alert like your principal investigator or whatever if anything like this happens. Which is like, yeah, as I said, like the bar for me is on the floor for expectations when it comes to university administrations. But like, congratulations, University of Waterloo. That's great. And if you are a student researcher and CSIS gets in touch with you, call me. I mean, I'd love to write about that.
Amazing.
Yes.
I kind of do think there's like one other thing that I want to mention before we get into the meat of this episode, which is the budget, which is, what's been happening with respect to people who are trying to cross the border and the awful tragedy.
Yes, which kind of ties into federal politics.
Yes,
stuff.
It absolutely does tie into federal politics and the tragedy at Akwesasne. I just like, I guess I read some reporting on like how awful this whole ordeal has been for the people who live on Roxham Road. And I just like, as someone who has been there, who's been to Roxham Road and to try to support Haitian migrants who were being targeted by police in 2018. The reason why it's like one of the reasons why it becomes like this issue for people who live in the neighborhood is because of the policing that's there. Like that's like, it's people aren't crossing the border trying to, like making a whole bunch of like, here, I'm right here, like that's not what the issue is. And of course, people are crossing using that border, using that road and, using the route that those who died in that tragedy in the St. Lawrence River, because of the safe third country agreement between the United States and Canada, which was updated during this last week. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay, actually, it is correct, but it's also not correct.
I did hear you reporting on this on the Daily News.
Ah, yes. The news that the Safe Third Country Agreement has been enhanced, strengthened, made more intense or more powerful. This is like the exact opposite of what everybody who has a sensible take on immigration and migration has. And so for a long time, people who are involved with migrant justice and activism have been calling for the Safe Third Country Agreement to be scrapped. It came into the public awareness more in the last couple of years because more and more people were crossing the border, triggered by, erratic comments and racist policies of Donald Trump. But, people had been coming before that. And as the calls were like, this piece of shit legislation is making people unsafe. It's pushing people outside formal points of entry because that's the only way that they can come into Canada. The federal government, it gets taken to court. A federal court finds the act to be a violation of people's rights. It's now before the Supreme Court. We don't have a response to this. Secretly, quietly, in April 2022, the federal government with the United States signs an agreement to make this act even more harsh, to actually formally close non-official points of entry. So you cannot claim refugee status, be a migrant, and cross from the United States into Canada anywhere. Not official points of entry, not unofficial points of entry. Now, what is very confusing to me, and I am not a lawyer, I don't know enough about this stuff, but people are crossing and then making successful asylum claims. Like there is some processing going on, and some people are getting successful asylum claims, which then begs the whole question, like, what the fuck? Like, just open up the border then, allow people to make these claims from anywhere, make it safer. But this agreement was secret for a year, and then they announced it last week when Biden made his state visit to Canada. So, I mean, we've got the secrecy of the agreement. We've got making it even more difficult to cross the border. There's a third interesting factor here, which is that people are not crossing to get into Canada all the time, that there's actually a lot of back and forth, that there's people that are coming from Canada and trying to cross in the United States. And that's what was happening when these 8 people died near Akwesasne in a boat, and they are still recovering the bodies. And there's some Indian nationals, there's some Romanian nationals, and there was 2 children with Canadian passports. If there's any proof of how completely fucked up our borders are, 2 of the victims were children with Canadian passports with the right to cross normally from Canada into the United States.
Yeah, I mean, it's tragic. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, what is going on with democracy if the government can then make this secret agreement that it doesn't tell us about for over a year? What is going on? And then on top of that, it's like, is the U.S. a safe country? Like for whom? And why are we making that blanket decision, especially given what's going on in the U.S. These days, with people being targeted for all different kinds of reasons, especially trans people, women. There's a lot going on in the United States right now, and a lot of people are not safe here. So I don't really understand the whole thing. But, if there's one thing that I do agree with that came out of that state visit, it was this hilarious quote that I read that Biden said, which is that Canada and the U.S. are 2 countries with one heart. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I don't know if that was supposed to sound like Canada's like a U.S. colony, but I think that is pretty much exactly what it is. So, yeah. And also then if that's the case, another reason to just stop pretending like this border is real. Yeah. It's only real for certain people.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, as we have to mention too, that these 8 people died in the same week that 39 people died at a migrant detention center in Ciudad Juarez near the border, Mexico to the United States. Like, No,
awful.
like we know borders kill. We know that this is, the flow of migrants, refusing to accept migrants. This is something that's been happening for many, many, many years across the Mediterranean. And Canada, the United States, they just found this little legal kind of way to make sure that people just could not claim refugee status, or they couldn't enter as migrants from the largest location of human crossing. Like, we see what you're doing, folks. Like, what the fuck? Europe has wanted to put a lot of parties in Europe. I shouldn't, make a generalization, but there's a lot of political parties and a lot of governments in Europe that have wanted to put up fences to keep people out from their shores. And Canada and the United States were like, you know what? We're just going to consider you a safe third country. So yeah, we're not going to accept this.
Okay. So now that we have updated you folks on those things, let's talk about this budget. You know how I love to take a look at budgets? I always love to read what the other parties say in their headlines of how they feel about it. Because I think it tells us a lot about what those parties are thinking in terms of, especially in a minority government situation, what those parties are thinking in terms of potential elections coming forward, how they're thinking of campaigning, what they see as the things that they should attack, and what they see as the things that they should take credit for. So can I read you some headlines?
Yes, I'd love it.
Okay, so first, let's read how the government is talking about it on their website, which I don't know. I think this is pretty funny, but maybe that's because I'm a word nerd. But their headline is a Made in Canada plan. Strong. I mean, I would hope it's made in Canada.
What are you talking about? Made in Canada.
It is. It is indeed the Canadian budget. So
the bar's on the floor for that one.
Check. Okay. A Made in Canada plan. I wonder how much they paid for that. What consulting company gave them that? Okay. A Made in Canada plan. Strong middle class. Do you feel inspired yet?
Yes.
No, don't worry.
Okay.
It's coming. Affordable economy. No? Okay. Healthy future.
I want a healthy future.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah, who doesn't?
I just think that this is like the most uninspired way to describe a statement of political priorities. It's strong middle class. Like, okay. Affordable economy. What does that even mean? Like, can an economy be affordable? Economy describes many things. I guess what they're saying is that like life is more affordable. So I don't know, maybe economy is life there.
I can finally buy 2 economies.
Yay. What you've always wanted. I know we've had this discussion. And healthy future, despite the fact that we're pretending the pandemic is over. Don't worry, Nora. Your future, full of health.
Sorry, did they say healthy presence? Because I don't think they did, Sandy.
Fair enough. They didn't. But I did say that your future would be full of health. So once all the people who are going to get fatally ill, perhaps that's when the healthy future arrives.
Right. Okay. Yeah, maybe. I mean, also, you're thinking perhaps too hard about this. And I bet they went to Chat GPT and were like,
oh, no,
give me a federal budget title. And that's what popped out.
Can you imagine? That'd be great.
Someone should try that and let us know what you get.
Okay, so that's what the government is saying. That's what the Liberal Party's spin on this is. Would you like to hear the NDP's?
Yes.
Okay, I actually am going to read 2 headlines from the NDP because they kind of put out 2 statements.
Of course. Why would you want to be coherent?
So the first one...
I'm assuming they're not coherent. Maybe they are. I don't know. Let's see. Okay.
First one, Jagmeet and the NDP. So right there, that tells us, Jagmeet's running again.
Sorry. You're like, it's not Jagmeet Singh. It's not leader Jagmeet Singh.
No. Jagmeet
sure.
And the NDP.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Sure. Jagmeet and the NDP. It's like a fucking band or like a doo-wop group.
Jagmeet and the NDP deliver results that will save many Canadians up to $1,700.
Okay, wow, great. I hope I'm in that category of many.
Okay, so that's headline number 1. And then headline number 2, are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Jagmeet Singh announces upcoming Canada-wide post-budget tour. Canada's NDP Jagmeet Singh. Oh, that's a typo. Okay. Let me read that again.
Come on, no.
Oh, no. Oh. Canada's NDP Jagmeet Singh will kick off a Canada-wide tour to discuss how the NDP has been fighting and will continue to fight for Canadians.
Okay.
Oh, man. That's embarrassing. Okay, so basically the NDP's 2 statements together has me wondering if this is a Liberal budget or an NDP budget. And if they use the grammar check function on whatever they're using to write this all up on.
Yeah, Grammarly, get in touch with these folks. Do them a favor. That is funny. I mean, it's coherent. That's coherent. They are taking credit for the budget.
Are you?
Why would you take credit for this budget? Like, it's cutting $15 billion out of the federal public service, and it's mandating 3% cuts across the board in all fucking departments, and it's promised up to $50 billion in defense spending, and the NDP is like, yeah, we want to wear that.
Yeah, because of the pharmacare part of it.
Pharmacare.
Oh, oops.
Oh man,
that didn't. That's not. Okay, the block.
Okay, block.
Should I read it in French or?
No, I mean spare us.
Oh, rude. Okay. Budget 2023 fiscal imbalance to the detriment of Quebec's interests.
Classic. They don't even need ChatGPT.
Classic.
They just took last year's headline.
No, but interestingly, their quotes are all talking about not just Justin Trudeau, but Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh together.
That is interesting.
Interesting target.
It's interesting for a couple of reasons. So, like, the NDP has pretty much no hope in hell in Quebec because they have never campaigned in Quebec. But they do have Alexandre Boulris, and he probably would be more at risk of losing to a Bloc member than any other party, although I haven't looked at the riding for a long time, but that would be my hunch, knowing where he is. And so that's a very interesting duo to try and pin blame on. Certainly the Liberals will cause the Bloc a couple of headaches. And I don't think that they have much to be worried about with the Conservatives because they're not really connecting at all. Poilievre isn't connecting at all with Quebecers. And we haven't really seen much about that written in English Canada. But polls are really bad for Poilievre. And he just... I don't know. I haven't heard anyone mention his name ever at all in my day-to-day life.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and
Okay.
there'll be more fighting over. I mean, the Conservatives have a couple of seats, and I think that people are assuming that with the death of the provincial Liberal Party, that the Liberals will have a difficult time federally. I don't think that that's true. I think that there's enough fidelity to the Liberal brand that in some parts of the province that's not going to be an issue, and they'll have their own machine that the provincial party doesn't have. But yeah, that's the Bloc is setting itself up for another sweep of their party in the next election, whenever that happens.
Okay, so ready for the Greens?
The who?
Their federal party. Come on, Nora, have some respect.
I'm kidding. I like 50% of their caucus a lot.
Me too. Okay.
Yeah.
So this one was interesting because their website isn't fully functional. So, I mean, it's a small caucus. But I got it. I got to it. Their headline reads, Federal budget fails, people and planet opens Arctic for drilling.
Wow. A clear political statement. That's amazing.
A clear political statement. It is super clear. It's also really, par for the course. Like, we know exactly the type of campaigning that the Greens are going to do. Whatever's happening internally, we don't know, but we know this. This makes sense. And then finally, the headline that I think is the best. which not the best because I love the Conservative Party, but the best because it's just the best headline out of all of these options, is the Conservatives. Are you ready?
Yes.
Justin Trudeau's $43 billion bonanza hurts hardworking Canadians.
$1 billion bonanza. Yeah, I like it.
Hurts hardworking Canadians. It's like a double alliteration. It's great. But it's also like a super clear message that is clear about who they are targeting. For their part, in the rest of their announcement, unlike the Bloc Québécois, they are not mentioning the NDP at all. They don't care.
Because they know they don't need to care.
No. They have done a really good job of appealing to the working class elements that they are trying to appeal to, and the NDP have not done a great job, and they know that. So this is all I guess that they need to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, let's get into some of the details then. Like, what about this budget does allow the Conservatives to say that they're caring about average people, where the Liberals and the NDP are fighting for a strong middle class? I mean, I didn't read the budget from fucking front to back, but I did read the sections that I'm interested in. I do want to point out one change that happened in the last week, though I don't know if it was the budget specifically or if it was announced around the budget. And I don't know if you caught this, Sandy, but they're getting rid of interest on student loans.
Wait, they are? Is it through some sort of grant? Is it like an interest grant or an interest tax credit?
No, okay. So in fairness to anybody that's skeptical and knows the Liberals, like, me and you, the announcement comes into effect on April 1st. So I kind of thought it was a joke. But Minister Carla Qualtrough announced the permanent elimination of interest for Canada student loans and the Canada apprenticeship loans and the Canada Student Financial Assistance Program. I mean, that's fucking so many years of fighting and lobbying and fighting and fighting and lobbying. And now that the student movement is so weak, they announce it. It's so fascinating to me. And for this to not be anywhere but by the way this has taken effect. I mean, I get it was previously announced, but this has budgetary impacts. This would have been in the budget. If I was the NDP, I'd be fucking all over that as a victory piece. But I haven't seen it really anywhere. Even telling you this right now, I was like, oh, I better double check because I'm not even sure if I fucking dreamed it. And no, it's here in black and white on a Government of Canada website. So that's a nice piece in this budget, which is good.
That's major. And, a part of me really wonders if some of the motivation for doing that has to do with what's happening in the United States around student loans, because it's like a lot of times things, two countries, one heart, Nora. A lot of times the policy changes that we see in Canada often happen as a result of some sort of discussion that's happening in the United States. So I wonder if that has had some sort of effect. But either way, that is really, really great. There should not be interest on public sector loans. It doesn't make any sense. That the government would be trying to make money off of the poorest students. And so that's an excellent, excellent win. I just part of me is really are we sure that this isn't going to be some sort of grant or tax credit interest program? What schemey thing is going to happen to make this real? But if you say it's already coming into effect, I mean, do they have time to set up a scheme? Might this actually be real? Fascinating.
I agree with you that who knows? The interest-free loan limit is from 210 to 300. So maybe it's not all loans. I don't know. It's the Liberals. It's schemy. If you have experience with it yourself because you're going through these changes, let us know. Because I too am very skeptical of it. And I have been in the situation where you read X in a government announcement and find out that actually it's Y. But, it is going to save students money, and that's great. And if I was running the NDP, which, they wouldn't let me within a fucking Canadian mile of the NDP, I'd be using this to call for free education and for free tuition fees, right? Fucking do some politics, folks. But anyway, Interesting good news there. It is in the budget, but it does sound like it had been previously announced, in effect on April Fool's Day, of course. Okay, so that's like all the laurels that I have for the Liberal Party and their budget.
Oh, what? You're not excited about the new grocery rebate?
Grocery rebate.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a rebate for your groceries. Come on. They are spending $2.5 billion in targeted relief, Nora. It is targeted. It is needs based, if you will, to those of us who need it the most.
Why didn't they just hand that money to Galen West himself? Like, that's where this money's going to go. When you give people relief to be able to pay for food, they'll use the money to buy more food, right? And I don't recall in the Western stare down, I'm thinking of like two men staring each other down with their guns in their pockets and their spurs in the back of their boots that Singh had with Weston. I don't recall Singh being like, we're gonna subsidize your profits through a targeted grant to the people that need it. Like, so there's no action at all for the fucking state to tell grocery companies to limit their price increases or do something that is in their purview and not in the government's fucking purview or coffers.
No. And the thing that's actually quite, that has been great about this promise is that I don't think that this works anymore. I think there was a period of time where this sort of like the government is giving me a check thing kind of worked, but I haven't seen a single interview with a single average person that journalists or reporters have been doing where anyone's like, this is really great. Everyone's like, this is the dumbest shit. Like, I do not want this check from the government that isn't going to make a dent at all in the issues with food insecurity in my life or with affordability of the rest of my life. Like, this doesn't make any difference. So really glad that the schemes are starting to, be more apparently schemy to the average person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I also rattled off a couple of things that I'm most concerned about, like, as I said, cuts to the federal public service and cuts to different departments and program spending. And we are all in with our spending for NATO, NORAD, and other enhancements to the Canadian military. There's massive amounts of new spending that's going towards like intelligence gathering and beefing up the RCMP and their intelligence capacity. And it's just like, what in the fuck is this bullshit? I don't trust any of this stuff. I don't trust them. It's obviously, money is being spent that easily could be spent somewhere else. And that got very short shrift from journalists. And partly I think it's because I don't think that the budget announced any new spending in the military because there's been so many spending announcements in the last 6 months. But I certainly wasn't surprised by anything that I saw in there. But there was a promise to invest in the military in a way that hasn't happened in more than 30 years. And it's like, wow, what social program has gotten that kind of investment in any time? Like more money than in the last 30 years? Like everything is being oriented towards spending in the military, which is just, I mean, there's the whole like, why are we at war and why do we do these things kind of aspect, but it's also a complete black hole where money just vanishes because there's so many people that make money off of arms and arms dealing, arms manufacturing. We know that Harjit Sajjan was briefed. We know this from the Maple. I mentioned this on the Daily News, but Sajjan was briefed just before he met with the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Qatar to like be excited that Qatar might be securing a deal for armored vehicles being manufactured by General Dynamics in London, Ontario. It's just like, fucking folks, like as we're fucking not able to afford stuff, as things are getting worse, as people are afraid to ride transit, as people seem to be on the brink, as like cops are getting killed by people in crisis, you're going to fucking just spend money on the military? Like, why don't you just at least put it into a bucket and set it on fire and help keep some fucking cattle warm for fucking 10 minutes? That'd be a more useful way to fucking waste that money.
I mean, our peer countries even know that Canada spending money on the military is bullshit. That's why they left us out as that new security agreement that's just like Australia, the UK, Australia, the UK, and the US. And they were like, Canada, whatever. If you don't know what I'm talking about,
it's
here.
Called the US is already
here. Right? One heart. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we're not going to talk about this, but look it up. there's this like new security agreement between Australia, the UK, and the US called AUKUS, and they like left out Canada, and it's like, what's going on there? Oh yeah, we're just the US. Another part of the budget that I thought was like really weird, and another place of like this sort of one heart, two countries theme that I've got going on here. Did you see that like part of their announcement had like safeguarding access to abortion?
No.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. It says there's a whole section on safeguarding access to abortion and other sexual and reproductive health care services. And like the first line of this part of the budget says, the overturning of Roe v. Wade in the United States serves as a reminder that we must continue to do everything we can to protect Canadians' access to the full spectrum of sexual and reproductive health care services, including abortion care. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while and heard us talk about this topic, you know that Canadians do not have equal access to abortion care. And especially if you're living in a rural community or out east, you might have a lot of trouble accessing abortion services. But even more hilarious is that this budget, the conclusion, the way that they do this, safeguard, guess how they do it?
Run some comments through Chat GPT and then tell Canadians that they got nothing to worry about.
I'll read it to you. Budget 2023 proposes to provide $36 million. That's a very little amount of money when it comes to healthcare, folks. $36 million over 3 years, starting in 2024, 2025, sure, to Health Canada to renew the Sexual and Reproductive Health Fund. Do you know what this fund supports? I'll tell you. This fund supports community-based organizations that help make access to abortion, as well as other sexual and reproductive health care information and services, more accessible for vulnerable populations.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a nothing promise, just trying to, make good on some news from the United States that permeates the Canadian psyche.
Well, that's not surprising. Now, I feel like we've got to talk about the big plan, the plan that puts so many people who I'm friends with on Facebook and on Twitter, who are members of the NDP or who work for the NDP, declaring fucking generational victory. This generation's Tommy Douglas in Jagmeet Singh and his incredible abilities to negotiate $13 billion for a new dental care program. Now, on one hand, it is possible that this will be a low-income dental care program that everyone who is low-income in Canada will have access to. That is possible, right? That is in the style of the cat might be in the box and it might not be in the box. And at this point, the cat is both in and outside of the box. Those two things are totally possible.
Schrodinger's dental plan.
It's Schrodinger's dental plan, right? On the other hand, it is also totally possible that the history of the Liberals in the last 30 fucking years and what we know about what they've done already to dental care, which they said that they created a program, but they didn't. They created this like very confusing tax rebate thing where you have to like maybe get up to $600 in tax rebates. But actually everyone in Canada who is low income, all children do have access to some sort of program and they're all bureaucratic and that's why that's not enough access, blah, blah, blah. It's possible that the $13 billion plan will also be that. Will be shit. So I don't know. I had some arguments with people who were frustrated that I was like so negative on this already. And it's like, folks, I get optimism in places that are not the federal budget. And you know what? If you find optimism in the federal budget, fucking have at it. Fucking have that glass of wine while you're reading it and enjoy. Like, don't let me fucking shit on your parade because parades are lots of fun. Even if they're like full of cops, which our St. Patrick's Day parade just happened and it was all cops from like Boston and Chicago and New York. Yeah, I didn't know that New York City was all white, but there you go. Or Chicago. They were all white. Every one of them was white and they had bagpipes.
Wow.
But yeah. But this is a play. I mean, I think that it's going to not be a real program. And if I'm wrong, then you'll hear something like me announcing this student interest announcement going, whoa, wow, shit, they did it. Maybe.
Well, yeah, I tend to agree with you that we should maybe trust that the Liberals will continue to be exactly who the Liberals have been.
Like, come on.
You know, if you feel a different way, like, I mean, I suppose we'll have to wait and see, which is actually, you know, an issue. Number one. Okay. They knew they were going to make this promise. They have been promising to make this promise. They have promised this promise in many different ways over the years. Okay. And still in this budget, we get details are coming. Like, I don't know, y'all. Like, whenever you hear details are coming later from the Liberal Party, whether it's a provincial Liberal Party or the federal Liberal Party, the details are bad. They're bad. There's no reason for them to not just let us know about those details right now. So what we've got is that there's going to be dental coverage for uninsured Canadians with an annual family income less than $90,000. No co-pays for annual family income under $70,000. And then it says details on eligible coverage will be released later this year. I mean, if they release something this year, I think that'll be like optimistic. I just don't. It would be very surprising. I just don't know. I feel like it's a hard one to trust. But of course, you know, the Liberals are going to want to make this one of their crowning achievements in addition to their fucking stupid grocery tax thing. And the NDP are going to make it a part of their crowning achievements from their time in office. So, I mean, for the NDP, I mean, that's quite the thing to hitch your ride to, is this thing that we still don't know what any of the details will be. So fascinating that you're doing that. But I suspect that this is not going to be as great as it should be, and as simple as it should be.
No, especially because if we think about the budget cycle, like I suspect that we'll get some details in December that will allow for some sort of positive news bump just before the holidays. And then nothing again. And then they'll re-announce this $13 billion next year's budget, so budget 2024, with more plans that hinge on you re-electing the Liberals. Now, this is where it doesn't make any sense for the NDP to be playing this game, because nobody is going to be like, well, I can either vote for the Liberals who did the thing, or I could vote for the NDP who sat like and cheered for the Liberals to do the thing. Like that's literally the decision that people are going to be making if they're deciding between these two parties. And I don't see why the NDP doesn't get that. And I also don't understand why the NDP is ceding so much territory to the Conservatives. The Conservatives came out swinging against this budget. They're like, we're ripping up this budget. And when people were like, what about this dental plan? What, like, don't you think that poor people should have dental coverage? They sidestep it. And the whole thing is like, this is just throwing money at the wrong problems, blah, blah, blah. We don't support it. And what the Conservatives have working in their favor is reality. At the moment, reality. The parents that are struggling to pay for fucking tooth extractions or braces or root canals, God forbid, root canals in children. The parents who live in places with no fluoride and their kids' teeth are completely fucked and they have to pay for fillings all the time because the kids have decalcinated teeth. You might be hearing a little bit of my own problems right now. Although I live in a province with universal free healthcare, free dental care for children. But if Poilievre is saying that this is a bullshit promise and average poor parents are like, yeah, I know that I can't get the help that I need to pay for my kids or my own dental coverage, that's rhetorically similar. All right. That's rhetorically similar. And he's exploiting the space between the promise and the cynicism of the promise and what is reality. And so NDP and liberal people can all they want be like, oh, Poilievre's going to be fucking terrible for these people, which he obviously will be. But he's the only one talking directly to the people who right this minute have the bills in hand, knowing that they have to pay for them before the end of the year. And this is why these kinds of vague long-term promises are so fucking damaging. And it's also why, you know, politics that are tied to the rhythm of the 4-year election cycle are so destructive, because there's no interest at all in accelerating any of this stuff, in figuring out how to do something quickly and getting money to people or getting the services to people, instead stringing them along and being like, well, this is the promise, and if you don't elect us, then you'll never get it.
Yeah, and you know what? I agree almost entirely with your prediction of how this will go, except for I do think whatever they announced just before the holiday, the details that were here, there's going to be something in there that isn't good enough. And I think that they will, like, it's part of the plan to fix that thing that isn't good enough for the next budget, which will come just before the next election. That, you know, in order for them to deliver, you're going to have to vote for them. And the other ridiculous thing about the NDP strategy on this is that you can count on that being real. So what would have been a better strategy from the NDP if they wanted to claim victory on anything that has to do with this is to wait for the thing that was going to be inadequate, because there's going to be something inadequate about this. There's going to be something that's shit. And then use your power in a minority government situation to force changes from the plan itself, because then you can actually say this is as a result of what we've done, rather than these sort of amorphous statements that, yeah, we caused this. Like, did you? They were promising this before, and there's no details here. But I mean, you know, declare victory, have a tour, I guess. I assume Justin Trudeau will be doing the same, and we'll see who thinks, how many Canadians think it was the NDP versus the Liberals, if they are indeed going to vote in either of these parties as a result of this dental plan that isn't happening because they're going to use it for the election. Well, Ta-da. And
it's also like, it's so ridiculous too, because it's like either someone who's so close to voting for the Liberals are happy with what the NDP are doing and they'll choose the Liberals, or you're completely galvanizing people who are so fucking fed up with the Liberals that they will not vote for the NDP either, because they just gave them this fucking blank check to do whatever they want. Like, it is... This agreement is so, like, hilariously bad. It makes, I laugh every time I think about how hilariously bad. They were like, own us, just own us. Like, we'll take anything. It's like, you're going to take a fucking food rebate. Yeah, we'll take that. And we'll take a promise too. Just a promise, nothing real. Okay, yeah, we'll take that as well. And everything else we're just not going to do. Yeah, okay, we'll take that too. Like, It's a joke. It's a joke. And you don't build political capital. You don't build support. You don't build anything. Like, it's like they think that they're going to fucking, like, I mean, how many times I've said this over the last 25 years? Hide under some coats, and then some miracle of fucking parliamentary procedure happens, and then Jagmeet Singh gets announced as the prime minister. Like, that's the plan. I mean, good luck on the tour. Good luck on the tour. I'm sure some people will go. Like, come out to the events. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's the big announcement. There was, like, you know, new money as well for health funding, but not really, because the big federal provincial health agreements had already been signed and announced. And and otherwise, the devil's in the details. I mean, Sandy, did you see that they're announcing 2 billion trees to be planted by 2030?
Wait, what year is it?
Yeah, right.
I feel like I've heard this somewhere before.
That is 2 billion trees net, the amount of trees that have been built since the first time that was announced in 2019. Do you know how many trees have been planted since 2019?
I mean, since 2019. I mean, that was one cycle of promise. So it must be at least 1 billion trees, surely.
Well, and let's everybody remember that 1 billion is a fucking large number. We don't think of it as being that big because it's just a bunch of extra zeros, but those zeros have fucking meaning. So since 2019, when this announcement of 2 billion trees was made, and I mean, we can even talk about the merit of that announcement in the first place and monoculture and all blah, 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 blah. But no, 30 million trees have been planted so far.
Oh, great. Cool. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would just not put that in the budget. I would just quietly not remind people about it and then just have quiet tree planting happening. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. Fuck. That's, I mean, the promise itself was ridiculous in the first place. Why are they still harping on this? Is it helpful to them at all? What polling is telling them that this is the thing? This is the thing that people want to hear from the government? That's outrageous.
It's penance. It's their, like, this is a very Catholic government, right? So it's penance for the Arctic drilling.
Great.
Every fucking billion tree is more Arctic drilling. So 2 billion trees is that much more Arctic drilling. Go say your Hail Marys over there on the bench, and you will be forgiven for your sins.
Oh my God. Okay. Great.
Yeah. I got nothing else on the budget. I mean, I'm sure I have other things, but I feel like that pretty much does the tour for me.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything really worth talking about. And I think that that's because, in part, because of this agreement with the NDP, it means that the Liberals can like just rest on their laurels. And that's what they're doing. Why wouldn't they do anything else? So here we are. It's clear from all of the statements that have come out, like, that the party to watch is the Conservative Party. And we know this, of course. Like, they're the ones who are literally planning and putting some good effort behind their plans for an upcoming election and for trying to appeal to their typical base, but also outside of their typical base. And you can see it. You can see the strategy, and you can kind of see how it's working too. So, I don't know. That's not great. I hope things change in the coming months. But I have no that hope. I don't think that that's real. I don't think that that'll actually materialize. So that's the budget.